Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, and boy, do we have a treat for you today. But first, we want to thank our show sponsor, Gungerstein for Senate. She's running for U.S. Senate, and she's nonpartisan and pro-energy and has a couple things to say about how Joe Biden, our president's not doing a great job. But we want to thank her for being our show sponsor. It's because of her sponsorship that we're able to get all the conservative news through all the nooks and crannies of Alaska, which is very exciting. And today we have an awesome guest. We have Mayor Dave Bronson. And for folks that have been living under a rock or in a closet, Mayor Dave Bronson is a hero to us conservatives in Alaska. He won the mayor of Anchorage seat about a year or so ago. And every major political poll that was a professional poll that's out there said he didn't have a chance. And he said, hold my coffee, let me go talk to my folks. And he rallied the troops, and he actually went out there and spoke with and to real everyday folks that live in Anchorage and was able to pull off a victory. So welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, Mayor. So happy that you're on the show with us today.
John, thank you very much for the opportunity, and a special thanks to Suzanne for the great work that she does advocating for truth in our state.
So you've been the mayor for about a year or so. How did you first get involved in politics in the first place? I know that you probably had a career where you probably didn't need to get involved in politics, but maybe you saw there was no other choice. But tell us the story of how you first got involved in politics.
The first time I went in 1968, I went door to door for Richard Nixon in his presidential campaign. I was 10 years old, and my great aunt was the county Republican chairwoman. So we got in her car, and I went door to door doing lit drops. So that's the first time. I've always been certainly interested in politics and history. I think politics is, after religion, is probably the most important function in our society. It's the two things they say you're not supposed to talk about in polite company. I disagree. I think those are the two things that we must talk about always, but politely. And I'm not interested much in sports anymore, even though I'm a Packer fan. Because I just kind of learned that you win the Super Bowl, and the next day you're starting over, and it doesn't seem to matter. But in politics, it does matter, because we're still dealing with the consequences of the Lincoln Douglas debates and the races back, a couple hundred years ago. So I think politics is profoundly important, and unfortunately, the left seems to recognize that far better than we do. I'm a kind of a center-right conservative guy, we're focused on raising our kids and paying the taxes and recreating and building businesses and doing our jobs, and the left they do better at this. They raise their kids to get into education and into politics and to media, and they've completed their what's called the long march through the institutions, and now we're fighting a catch-up game. And frankly, that's why I'm here. I was retired well, having lots of fun, I guess, but fun doesn't cut it. You're not having real fun when you're watching your city be in your state, your country being torn apart by those advocating for a leftist ideology. So that's how I got involved, and moreover, why I got involved. I love my country more than anything. I put my country before everything, before family, before everything else. Country first, country always. And I was seeing it destroyed at the local level, and even at the national level. So I had to step up. I didn't have a choice.
We're happy that you did, and for folks that have maybe caught a couple of the Anchorage Assembly meetings, it seems to be literally a battle/war at times, and we're very thankful that you, Mayor, and Amy Demboski are sitting there to battle for the conservative side. And even though you said, you're right of center, if you're right of center in the Anchorage Assembly, you are, probably considered very right, because that is a very left group of folks. And so we appreciate you battling there. It seems like you guys are having a meeting every other couple hours. So thanks for being there doing that. You did have a recent victory, which is very exciting. The Anchorage Assembly has been known for their overreach, their just ridiculous spending policies of buying this hotel and that hotel during the COVID season, just kind of wasting money on things that people don't often even realize the money's being wasted on. But you've been there and you've kind of called them on the carpet, especially in their overreach. Tell us about this recent court victory and what it means for your administration as it relates to you being able to, handle the day-to-day operations there at the Anchorage municipality.
Well, I think it was a clear win for us. Very clear. We got everything we wanted out of it, in that the court communicated quite clearly that the assembly was overreaching. And to back up a little bit, for the last several years, 2 administrations, the assembly was very much involved in running the city. And so I think only Pete was the only one that ever served under Dan Sullivan. So under Mayor Berkowitz and Austin Quinn Davidson, those 2 mayors, the assembly was given a free reign on managing and running and involving themselves into city operations. We came in and I saw instinctively and instantly that wasn't right. You don't run things by committee, and our charter structured how the city is run in a very specific way. And it says all the executive functions rest with the mayor. And a lot of those duties are then delegated to not responsibilities, but the duties are delegated to the municipal manager. In this case, it's Amy Demboski. So they would, for example, and it's not a big thing, but it's indicative, and that's this, is I would want to talk to a director, or Amy would want to talk to one of the directors. Well, the director was unavailable. We go, well, wait a sec, we need to talk to him or her. And they says, well, they're in a meeting, a work session with the assembly. And I'm going, well, I know, and this went on for a long time, and we're trying to get it under control. And the history was, and we kept most of the directors. So, and I'm not blaming them. They had this methodology where the assembly calls and they do their beckoning. Well, we were trying to run a city. They were trying to run a city by committee. And I'm a former military guy, airline guy. You run large organizations by executive authority or executive process. And the process was broken. We stepped in and fixed the process. So eventually it got so. Oh yeah, I guess the screen went dark there. So I don't know where we left off with, but I think we were talking about the process. So anyways, we directed all directors to they could only speak with the assembly staff through the municipal manager. We had to rein in the process and kind of clean up the process, and that worked. The assembly kind of learned that they don't run the city. Now we want their input on direction and certainly spending, because they control the purse strings. But man, they were right down. And well, this lawsuit stemmed from that that internal conflict that was there. They want to run the city, so we had the chief equity officer in the Office of Equality and Equity and Justice, and they created it. And they says, well, at the executive level on the 8th floor, we have the right to put in a person in coordination with the mayor, and they did this under Mayor Berkowitz. And then that person cannot be terminated except for an agreement between the assembly and the mayor. Well, that's against the charter. That's the foundation of the lawsuit. It's you can't do that on the executive level. Nationally, it would be like this: the Congress comes in and hires literally hires the Department of Defense or Department of Transportation. Now, the Senate has an input on advice and consent, but you don't do it that way, because so I had an equity officer who was sitting down the hall from me. I'd be in the coffee room talking to that person. This is a person I didn't have any input on hiring. This is a person who was, in reality, quite sympathetic to the worldview shared by the assembly. And so it was a person that I instinctively couldn't really have any confidence in because of their dual loyalty to the assembly. And so the process, we had to protect the authority of the mayor's office for me and any ensuing mayor. And so we took it to court and we prevailed. The judge saw that was right, that the executive has the authority to hire and fire.
I love it. I think that's such a great victory. And, it helps every mayor out from here on out to have that line in the sand for, the assembly's there to kind of make the budget and do those kinds of high level things. And you're there to play a day-to-day role in the operations. And I think there's very clear distinction between those two powers, and this helps clarify that distinction. And no longer can the assembly go and try to hire people in your executive office and oversee them, which I think is a good thing. So kudos to you on that victory. So what are a couple of, you've been here for a little bit. Is there one of your accomplishments that sticks out to you that you and your team have been able to accomplish in the last year, something that you're proud of? Tell us about that.
Well, the two big things for the city, as I see it, are three things actually. Is one is the port, the other is the overall homeless problem, and that metastasizes into many aspects of society. And then trying to drive down the cost of building homes and building businesses in the city. So on the port issue, we came in and I restructured it. It took a month or two, and we had to do a deep dive. And the port of the PAMP, the Port of Alaska Modernization Program, very large. In fact, I believe it's the second largest construction project in the history of the state after the pipeline. And we came in, and it was languishing. I think there was an organizational problem. We had very talented people managing the port, but they're port managers, not engineers, and certainly not large capital project engineers. And they were running it. And as they're busy running the day-to-day, well, this thing languished for many years, even as the port was deteriorating, to the point of had the earthquake in 2018, had that lasted another 7 or 8 seconds, the port would have fallen over. And there is nothing more catastrophic to this state than that port failing. 90% of the people in the state depend on that port for everything, from cars to food, to building materials, to clothing, everything comes. And there's no substitute for the port. It's not like, we'll just go to Seward or Whittier or to Homer. It doesn't work that way. There's no capacity. That's a single point failure. And if it fails, at the very least, half of the population of the state would have to leave the state because there would be no food. Yeah. That's how critical this is. And I campaigned on homelessness and Title 21, 23 changes, building businesses, creating this. And as soon as I got in, the port the port issue went right to the top because of the existential threat it posed to the survivability of the state. And so we reorganized. I put an engineering firm. They run the project, okay. And I told them, it turns out it was Jacobs Engineering, great company. But I was pretty stern with them. I said, there's a lot of engineering companies in the world, and if you don't do the job, I will fire you, and I will hire someone else who will do the job. And I says, I need the timeline shortened, and I need the cost brought down to an absolute minimum. And Jacobs has performed marvelously. They're great partners. We're doing our checks and balances. We have other companies looking at their work to make sure that they're doing their due diligence. And they have shortened the timeline by 18 months to what we call food security, which is one portion of the port, one dock within the port. And we're very much encouraged by that. And once that dock Terminal 1 is stood up, we're in really good shape. Then we can continue the rest of the project, which is a $1.6 billion project. Then we can continue on with that for the long-term future of the city and for the port.
That's
so
awesome.
That's that. And then homelessness, I think we came in and through our departments, I think we're bringing focus to the homeless issue. I mean, there's I got a lot of people. I tried to bring a NAB center in because we looked around the country, frankly, around the world, on how to do things and how not to do things. And it became apparent quite quickly that we were not going to do it like they do in St. Paul or Seattle or San Francisco or LA. And one of those fixes of the greater problem is what's called a navigation center. We advocated for a large navigation center in Elm or Tudor area of town. It was analyzed by the homeless czar for both Biden and Trump, that was a very good site. It was fairly remote, but still close enough to facilities to give the people there access to health care, food, and whatever. Well, the assembly shot me down on that. And so now, a year later, and they've been fighting me for a year, most of them, not all of them. And we could have had it stood up by June, July, maybe even August. And so now we're here. So the Sullivan had to shut down on July 1st because the funding for it was ending, the FEMA funding for it. We didn't have a choice. So we shut it down, and I go, well, hey, folks, we got another 6 or 5 weeks before the Sullivan shuts down. What are we going to do? And so we brainstormed, and I don't like the idea of campgrounds for homeless, but we were in a big fire danger. Davis Park, I walked Davis Park. There was people living all over in the woods, and it was tinder dry. There was bears everywhere. And I says, the fire threat drove a lot of our decision making. And so I says, what's the fix? And the staff came up and says, well, we've got this campground, Centennial Park. It's underutilized. Let's we can allow people who want to camp there. So we had 58 people that came out of the Sullivan, and they wanted to go there. So we provided them transportation. There is a narrative out there wrongly that we forced them out and forced them into Centennial Campground. Nothing could be further from the truth. But most of the 200 people came from other campgrounds. And so we provided a much better environment, hot, cold, running water. We cut the trees up to 6 feet so that you can get a lot of visibility from one spot up to, in some place, up to 200 yards of visibility. And hot, cold, running water. We segregated women and men. It certainly wasn't without problems. And when you're dealing with a problematic population, there's going to be problems. And I spent a lot of time there. I actually slept there one night here a couple weeks ago, and I was there most days, twice a day. I'd do a morning run, an evening run. So all of a sudden, this narrative came up by some politicians who are running for office that it's a humanitarian crisis. Nothing could be further from the truth. And it's this great lie. One person says it, another person repeats it, and all of a sudden they say it's a humanitarian crisis. It is not. It's not even close. We've got video, we've got photos of it. We've interviewed people. And when I go in there, people routinely say, thank you for standing this up. This is way better than the Sullivan. It's way better than Davis Park because of the amenities. And we run a tight ship. We didn't allow garbage to be accumulated, no shopping carts, no lawnmowers. We said, and we gave them tubs. So it's a clean operation. But it's not without challenges. But we actively work the challenges and the problems. And Salvation Army stood up here a couple of weeks ago, and they're running the operation, the coordination, free of charge. And so I just, people want to know the truth. It's fine, but if you're going to believe a bunch of politicians running for office who want to destroy me in whatever effort. By the way, the same politicians who kept me from standing up, by and large, the NAB Center for a year. Because if we remember this, if we had that NAB Center, we wouldn't be in the park. The park is the least worst of all the options, Centennial Park. And so that's world I deal with, that I work in. People say, well, you can't do that. You can't put people in a park. I says, my obligation is I have a bunch of must-dos, and I live in a world with a bunch of people says you can't do. Well, I'm going to focus on what I must do, and I'm just going to do it. And then the people, the naysayers, these what are they, nattering nabobs of negativity, I think Schwarzkopf called them. We're going to let them pitter patter and talk on the side. We're just going to do what needs to be done, as unpleasant as it is. And then we'll keep moving forward. And there'll be more challenges. As you know, there was a shooting last week there, Wednesday. We had a police officer and a perpetrator that was shot in exchange of gunfire. Really bad. But that stuff happens all the time in the homeless community. At least we were in a site where the police had access. And so we're actively managing that camp, very proactively. And we're going to get there. We're not going to solve homelessness. That's what I think everyone agrees on that. It's how well you manage it is what matters. And so anyways, homelessness, the port, that's a big one. Title 21, 23 changes. Same house, it's roughly 35% premium in Anchorage to build a house compared to the Valley. So a lot of people leaving Anchorage to go to the Valley. I want to reverse that. I think we need fewer people on the roads. I think Anchorage is a better place to live if you're working in Anchorage. And so with Title 21, that is how you use your land, and Title 23, how you build your buildings. If we make them easier and we're more competitive with the Valley, I think we'll get a really good outcome.
Well, Mayor, sounds like you and your staff are got your work cut out for you. You've been able to accomplish it and experience some pretty tremendous things right out the gate. And I want to encourage you to keep fighting the good fight. We've unfortunately ran out of time. A half an hour has gone by very quickly. And so I want to thank you for coming on the Must Read Alaska show. And thank you to you and your staff for, again, keeping up that good fight. I think that oftentimes good folks don't run for office because they don't want to go through all the BS and the drama. And you stuck your name out there, put your name in the hat and won. And I hope that you continue on to have success as the mayor and even far and above and beyond that. So thank you so much for coming on the Must Read Alaska show. I want to thank our show sponsor, Gungerstein for Senate, for sponsoring the Must Read Alaska show. It's because of her sponsorship we're able to get conservative news through all the nooks and crannies of Alaska. And for those of you that have not yet checked out the Anchorage Assembly meeting, go out and check it out. It's quite the entertainment factor is about a 10 out of 10. And you won't want to miss at least a couple of those every once in a while, because they keep you on your toes and they keep you thankful for what you have in your own city.
And there's one on tonight, and we're told the Socialist Party of Alaska is going to be there protesting tonight. So I don't know what they're protesting. So
That should be fun. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and tune in tomorrow. We'll have the CEO of the Rasmussen Foundation on talking about what they're doing in Alaska, and we hope to hear from you soon. Until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska.